to the newcomers who came to attend especially the second session. So we will start with Christophe Mincke, who's coming from Belgium, not from France, as it is written in the leaflet. So he's coming from he's the director of the criminology department in the National Institute of Forensic Sciences and Criminology, INCC in French, and he will tell us about mobility as a matchmaker.
Between justice and management.
Between justice and management.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, or for accepting my let's be more precise.
It's all right today.
Yeah. I'll make as if I was invited. Okay. So, what will it be about today? I'll try a quite risky bet, because I'm working on mobility as a paradigm to explain mutations in criminal law. And I was proposed to write a text which is just now published in Droit et Société, so it's in French. But I didn't work on management, so I took this as an opportunity to explore another way to apply my hypothesis to a new dimension. So I've started from the work of Dan Kaminski, who is a Belgian criminologist, who is working on management in penal criminal system, and I had no time to explore everything that was written about justice and management. But I started with him, and according to him, criminal justice today undergoes 4 mutations: an activity rise, a power redistribution between penal institutions, he says upstream, so towards police and so on, a promotion of proximity as a functioning principle, very important today, and participatory evolutions, so participation is good for you, according to the new way of thinking criminal justice. Kaminski links these evolutions with managerial imperatives such as productivity, under the form of flows management, efficiency, customer service, and what he calls définalisation, which means no interest for the finalities of the action. You are in the action, but you don't ask what it is about at the end. So définalisation, finalité, is the aim. For him, management is just a way to stabilize the bureaucratic penal system, as it is the nature of criminal justice, according to him, to be bureaucratic. For him, penal system can only be bureaucratic, and management is just a manner to stabilize it today when it's confronted to new problems. So he represents as here the system, bureaucratic integrated penal field, within which there are managerial organizations and practices, and within these managerial organizations and practices there are windows of partnership and contracts. He thinks that these 4 different modes of managing justice are today used simultaneously. And he links this with the 4 models of justice theorized by Van de Kerkhove and Tulkens, other Belgian criminologists and lawyers. Bureaucracy would be linked to imposed justice, managerialism to a consensual justice, cooperative partnership to participatory justice, and competitive market to negotiated justice. This was the start. And then I thought, maybe my hypothesis could help going further. I think this can be refined on two aspects. First, understanding why management has been accepted by the penal biotopy, because for me it's always a big question. How can it be that persons who studied law, who were impregnated with the ideas of rigid laws, procedures, and so on, can be so attracted by management? And how can it be that their vision of the world can be so much influenced by something so strange for them as management is? That's the first question. The second one is understanding how it integrates into much broader social evolutions. What's linked with this management turn in justice? Can we refer this to other phenomena outside of justice, and not only in management field, not only in corporations and so on, that could help us to realize what's happening today? I said it was risky, but I've begun, I have to go to the end. My proposal is to use the mobilitarian ideology, which is a concept that I am developing with Bertrand Montulet, who is a Belgian too, mobility sociologist. So what's mobilitarian ideology? The idea is that we are now facing the imposition of four main imperatives, named activity, activation, participation, and adaptation. And I am studying the effect of these imperatives in the Belgian criminal law, more specifically in the discourses about prison in Belgium. But I think that it can be integrated in a much broader movement. Activity. We think that activity is one of the main imperatives today, as it has become a central imperative in repressive policies. For instance, in repressive policies. What is it about? It's about doing something, anything, but you have to do something. Think about the overload imperative. You have to be overloaded. An institution has to be overloaded. If you say, no, I got time for myself, I work a little bit, not too much, and when it's 5, I say, oh, goodbye, I'm going, I have other things to do, or maybe nothing to do, but I don't want to work. It's quite unacceptable. Inactivity is something as the wrong. If you are unemployed, you can be unemployed, but you cannot be inactive. You have to do something, even if it's looking for a job that doesn't exist. For example, this activity principle is controlled through monitoring systems, which are monitoring activities every day, every time. And examples in the criminal system: community services based on the activity of the offender. The punishment is the activity. The mediation, victim-offender mediation that couldn't function without the activity of the litigants themselves. Or even in Belgian discourses about prison's problematic redefined through the question of the loss of autonomy. The problem of prison is no longer that you are in a prison. That's not the point. It's the problem that you are deprived of your autonomy, and when you go out, you cannot do anything. So inactivity is the main problem. It's said as is in the parliamentary documents of the recent penitentiary law, Belgian law. Activation. The activity is not a question of routines and mechanical actions. The principle of movement must lie in the person itself, and acceptation, the will of the person, is really necessary. It's all about responsibilization. If you think about, again, the workless people, they are asked not to wait at home until they are proposed a job. They are asked to look for it or even to create it. It's they have to do it. It's not just good to do it, it's an imperative. Activation is, for me, present everywhere in the criminal system today. Simple acceptation of community service penalty in Belgium. When you undergo a community service penalty, you have to say, yes, I accept it. And I could speak 10 minutes about it because it's really interesting, but in the parliamentary document there are discussions about it, and you see that the problem is just that they want the offender to want it. Just ask me so that I can punish you, but it's coming from you. You are activating yourself, you are punishing yourself. Assistance to detainees in prisons, which is nowadays conceived as an offer of services. We offer you services, but it's your job to come and ask us for a bunch of activities or of assistances to go further, and so on. I don't think I will have time enough to speak about everything. Participation is also a gimmick in today's discourses, because imperatives not only concern individual behaviors, they also constrain interactions with the environment. Participation is the obligation of developing collective projects, both successively and in the same time. So we are all participating to a collective project. This workshop is a project, but when you go with your boss, it tells you, even if you're just down in the scale, it tells you we're just in the same boat and we are just participating to the same project. Prison, in the parliamentary documents, is presented as a collective project. It's written that prison is not an institution imposed by the state or whatever to the detainees, but it's a collective project of director, guards, and inmates who all together participate to the very happy project of prison. Criminal procedure is also collectively monitored flow. If you look at this kind of scheme, which is, it's not really important what's written, it's the way in the statistics of the public prosecutor, the criminal procedure is presented. And it's just a flow, but it wouldn't have been presented like that 50 years ago. 50. Just because it's not just different steps, it's a flow. And in here, there are different institutions that cooperate to make the criminal treatment happen. So it's a collective project. And when you look at the way these people cooperate, they are no longer saying, here's the line where my powers end, and there is the line where yours begin. They are just saying, if you don't come on this side of the line, and if I don't go with you on the other side, we couldn't make it. So it's a totally different way of thinking things, and I think that this can be theoretized through the idea of participation. Adaptation is the fourth and last imperative. In order to participate to multiple projects, you have to be able to adapt yourself to the others. The specific context, the particular demands of a field, an objective, a method, whatever. Adaptation is a main virtue, it's flexibility. You have to be flexible. In Belgium victim support systems, it's required from the victims themselves to adapt themselves to different institutions. And when the remark was made, the conceptors said, yeah, it's normal. We did it. It was intentional. Because the victim, in order to restore herself or himself, has to learn to adapt and to manage the different offers of services and of support. So it's meaned like that. Mediation demands also a reciprocal adaptation, and everything is thought around the idea that the solution of a conflict is the reciprocal adaptation of litigants. Even legal rules have to be carefully applied and not applied. For instance, in the parliamentary documents of the penitentiary law, it is said this law hasn't to be applied too strictly. We just have to manage it, apply it when it's necessary, and not applying it when it's not necessary. What's the common idea through activity, activation, participation, and adaptation? We call it mobility. It's the idea that you are restless. You have to adapt to act permanently. And from this way of describing things, we come to an ideology. Mobility is just a way of seeing things, but mobilitarian ideology is the idea that mobility is good in itself, not only for justice, but in every field of the social life. Mobility can be really simply defined as a movement through space during a stretch of time, so it's related to space and time. What we consider here is mobility and space as a non-physical dimension, not exclusively physical dimension. There is physical space, but also, we know it, social spaces, conceptual spaces, and so on. So if you think a space as something also not physical, you can imagine that there's a mobility in other dimensions than the physical one. But what lies at the ground of this interest and imperative of mobility? We think, and this comes from the studies of my colleague, sociologist of mobilities. It's really difficult for a French-speaking man. It's the idea of a space-time shift. We think that the way we collectively conceive and live time-space has changed. The way we are just thinking that space is has changed, and the same for time. We speak about space-time because we think that space and time has to be defined together, because with a certain conception of time, you have a certain conception of space. Space, we think that we went from circumscription to punctuation, from a space thought around the idea of border, a bordered space. So space was just something without any form until you draw a line. And this line is between two states, between the powers of two institutions, between two disciplines, scientific disciplines, and so on. This was, we think, the way the world was mainly, the space was mainly thought before. So circumscription created territories with hierarchized, so hiérarchisé. And if you think about the pyramid of powers, this is a good example of this. It's just what's the competence of the tribunal correctionnel, what's the competence of the tribunal de police. There is a hierarchy between the two, but also horizontally between criminal cases, civil cases, social help, social care cases, and so on. So we think that everything was thought this way, and that today space is more and more thought through a stretch, une étendue, as we say in French, punctuated by attractive. Ah, ça c'est vraiment compliqué. Je sèche sur mon anglais. Yeah, punctuated by attractive dots. If you think about procedure that this way, you can say public prosecutor is very important, but he is not independent and he has no border around his powers. He's always interacted with others. And when you have to decide something, you have to combine different relationships. Time, we think, is conceived today more como a progressive and constant change than, like it was before, like a succession of stasis and ruptures. So eras separated by very clear ruptures. So we are coming from eras to flows. Alors, 2 minutes. We think in this context that mobility has become prior to immobility. Because in such a space, without any border, and with a time which is constantly eroding everything, you're always moving in comparison with the other elements of the space you're in. So today, my relationship with the police will be this one. But maybe tomorrow it will be different. And there are all other instances which have their own strategies and their own positions, which are also constantly moving. So you cannot just say, I'm behind my border and nothing interests me, I will do the same job every day. It's not the way it works anymore. And we think that today mobility has become inevitable and thus compulsory. But what about criminal justice? I think that the 4 Kaminskian evolutions of criminal justice can be related to this theory of mobilitarian ideology. Activity rise is linked for us to activity, activation, and the overload as a way of living. Power redistribution is logical in a context when you cannot think about the borders. It's not the idea that we refuse, it's the idea that we cannot anymore think about the border as a real border, as something able to describe and to prescribe reality. It's also a power redistribution, a consequence of the importance of participation and of the conception of time as a flow and not just a succession of eras and not just a criminal procedure can no longer be being thought as a succession of eras, but as a flow where there are different interventions. Promotion of proximity and of participation are 2 ways for us of naming the same phenomenon. It's all about relation in a non-hierarchical space. Proximity and participation are about the same thing, about coming into contact to things. No matter the distance, proximity can be really, we can be very close, being very far away physically. So everything here is, we think, a question of accessibility.
20 seconds.
Oui. And what about management? There are the 4 main principles of management: productivity, flows management, and efficiency, which are clearly linked. In this context, we think can be linked to mobilitarian ideology. Activity, processes as flows and fluid circulation as perfect efficiency are clearly linked to this way of thinking management. Customer service is for us the result of the imperatives of participation and adaptation as relational imperatives, value and as a result of the definition of value as a codified thing. There is no more question of a norm pre-established, but of the code definition of norms. Definalisation is also logical in a context when drifting mobility is eroding everything every time. So I think we cannot agree with Kaminski with the idea that bureaucracy is just one of the 4 ways of managing justice. I think we have to separate bureaucracy on one hand, which is, I think, an old way of thinking justice, and the three other models, which are, in my opinion, three declinations of the mobilitarian ideology. Management is for us no refinement of bureaucracy, but one of the numerous applications of a new relation to mobility, space, and time. This way out, finally. I think that management is only one in a large number of declinations of mobilitarian ideology. And this helps understanding how management could be accepted so easily in a system that seemed very far away from its values. If we consider that it's one of the last conquests of a new way of thinking, the conquest of a very conservative field where very strong norms ruled, you can understand that if this way of thinking society already rules outside, it's really easy for magistrates to say, yeah, logically, it must be the same inside justice as it is outside. And I won't speak anymore. We could make, if I had time, a link with other mutations, but I won't do it today. I thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for this very dense presentation, and thank you also for not having been stretching time too much.
Not too much.
Not too much. So if you have questions, comments, reactions.
Shall we the question now? I'm just curious about the link that you made between mobilitarian ideology with the management, but I didn't understand how did you put, if you do, the idea of